Hazelthorn by C.G. Drews. This is a story of a boy looking for a monster, and it is also a story of well-placed rage. People who belong to marginalized groups are often condemned for anger, for letting emotions spill, for messiness and mistakes. But we deserve to feel pain loudly and to feel injustices bloodily. Hazelthorn is a story of queer and autistic rage and of being pushed over the edge. It is a story of the horror of being denied autonomy. It's also about internalized shame and being at your worst before clawing your way toward self-acceptance. Chapter 1. He knows what it is to be buried alive, the feeling of dirt in his mouth and the quiet fitting around him like a well-tailored grave. Sometimes Evander still tasted under his tongue that rich earth clotting between his molars. It should have grown out of the memory by now, but he belongs to it, and not in a gentle way. Sometimes he feels like he's still outside, moldered down to the bone with roots moving through the soft tissues of his lungs and rot spilling from the remnants of his ribcage. No one saved him in time. He was never dug back up. Maybe all that's true left of him are white bones in the garden, and his ghost is the thing now rattling around the hollow expanse of this bedroom in the ancient moth-eaten manor of Hazelthorn. Except ghosts don't develop blood blisters along their arms after being viciously pinched, and Evander has just given himself his forward welt of the evening, a little shock of pain for proof of life. The grim sky has brought on an early twilight, and the gloom has put his mood through the floor. It gets to him sometimes how lonely he is. Only the elderly butler flits in and out of his room every day, bringing doses of thick, milky medicine that makes Evander feel sluggish and dulled. He'll flop out of his bed and stare at the wallpaper until the pattern of dead-eyed fawns and bloody thorns stops spinning and the loneliness passes. Then he wakes, and it begins again. The same and the same and the same. He gave up screaming a long time ago. All that's left is to let the quiet take in about him like a shroud as it runs the tongue around the rim of his ear, forcing him to listen to every noise he hates, drifting in from the cracked open window. The hushed whispers of trees, the trill of night birds, and cicadas as they flitter between the many-walled gardens, the humid breeze rifling the laurel hedgerows. The smell of summer is relentless, an unfettered punch of evergreens and florals, overturned soil and tree sap and life. He could slam the window shut, but then the garden wins. 17 years old and afraid of the outdoors. Pathetic. But it's just that when he looks at the garden, he thinks of blood. He thinks of the shovel coming down. He thinks of dirt hitting his face. He thinks of the accident, as his garden calls it. It was an attack, and you know it. His position in the oriel window seat isn't exactly helping his spiral. He's in a slouched U-shape with a book 1 inch from his nose, his legs halfway up the engraved scrollwork, and his neck at a crooked angle against the velvet upholstery. The cushions are over 100 years old, the emerald dulled to a decade black that matches everything else in this musty room. It's all rotting. The Hazelthorn estate, and he's rotting alongside it. From his second-story vantage point, he has a fair view over the dense expanse of the gardens, the old stone walls and massive trees and hedges gone rogue as thorny vines steal over everything with writhing malevolence. The word overgrown doesn't do it justice. The gardens are unmatched, unmanageable, terrible in their wildness. Even the cobbled path around the house is half vanished. Gnarly weeds sprung up between stones and brambles clawing up the manor's ivy-choked walls. Sometimes Amanda will sit in this window seat and watch Mr. Brian Lennox Hall himself stomp out there with hedging shears, still wearing his creased dress pants and waistcoat. His shined Oxfords soon flagged with grass clippings. He doesn't hire gardeners or any kind of staff aside from Carrington, choosing to manage the grounds himself with irregular though brutal efficiency, snapping green throats, pruning vine arteries, glowering the shrubbery into submission. He's an austere man, quiet and stern, but if he's outside, he always glances at Evander's window and raises a hand to say hello. It's what a father would do. Not that Evander would know. He doesn't remember his parents' faces. Mr. Lennox Hall has been his guardian since he was 10 years old, though he's often on business trips for interminable stretches. When he returns, he will visit Evander for a game of chess, a brief pat on the shoulder, and promise of new books. Maybe he's brusque with his real grandson, but Evander wouldn't know. He isn't meant to think about that boy, but still likes to put the wretched name in his mouth and roll it around like bitter hard candy. Lawrence Lennox Hall, he whispers to the garden, Laurie, and because his throat feels rusty from disuse, he adds, I hate him. There's a morsel of heat to it, just enough to scald the underside of his tongue and make him think of how it would feel to etch that name on the window glass with his teeth. He doesn't remember what it was like before, when the two of them were children, the best of friends, just as their parents were, living out of each other's pockets while their laughs echoed between the garden walls. But it's common to forget things after almost dying. An unmistakable tongue sounds from the heavy oaken door of his bedroom, keen lock. Evander sighs and lets his legs slide bonelessly down the wall before he pushes upright. 8 p.m. sharp. Time for meds, and then he'll watch a documentary on his ancient laptop until he falls asleep. Hazelthorn has barely dragged its decayed corpse into the 21st century, and installing internet was apparently a step too far, but he has recordings, he has books, and he's safe here. They've put him in the partially closed up north wing. His room is neat and comfortable with behemoth 4-poster bed surrounded by dark velvet drapes and wallpaper imprinted with poison oaks and moths and feral little fawns. There is no fireplace, though he always wishes for one when winter grows bitter. Bookshelves line the walls, a writing desk is tucked into the corner, puzzle and logic games are stacked in piles, and there's a worn track in the carpet from the window to the door, thanks to his pacing. And blood in the carpet is imperceptible now. He hardly ever thinks about it. He waits for Carrington to bustle in with his meds, but the door doesn't open. Evander frowns. He heard the lock turn, didn't he? Careful. It is a forbidden act. He edges across the room and presses himself against the hard oak of the door.